video. This is my TBR video for February, and I just want to say that wrap-ups for January, well, for the rest of the year, but starting in January, are going to be a little bit different. I am going to play a wrap-up game. So I really love bookish games, and I love a good TBR game, but my TBRs are so designed this year that, and I want it that way this year, that there's just not enough room for a TBR game. So I am going to gamify my wrap-ups. It means that I won't be reviewing on this channel every book that I read every month. In January, I will have read 28 books, and in February, my TBR is 30 books long. And that just feels really long for a wrap-up type sit-down video. My wrap-ups will still be sit-down. I did play with the idea of doing like a month-long reading vlog of wrap-ups every year, but that also, every month, but that also felt too long. So I've designed a little game with some questions, and every month it will be a different amount of books and different books that get covered based on how this game goes. And then in addition to that, I will also do a sit-down video where I review my top 3 reads of each month. So there will be 2 wrap-up videos, one kind of fun that will cover a variety of reads, and one that covers specifically my 3 favorite reads of each month. And that's going to start near the end of January. We're not there right now, obviously. We're just smack in the middle of the month, and I am smack in the middle of having finished half of my prescribed TBR for January. So I'm right on track. I'm feeling great about my reading, but we'll talk about all that in videos to come a little bit later this month. Right now, we're going to focus on my February TBR. Last year, I started posting, well, about halfway through the year, I started posting my TBRs earlier in the month, and I'm going to continue that this year. I know it freaks some people out. They're like, how do you know what you're going to read? And to be honest, last year, I really didn't always know what I was going to end up reading. But like I said, this year, I have a pretty prescribed TBR for each month. I wanted to try that because I wanted a little bit more control over my reading experience. And that doesn't mean that this TBR it's somewhere in between a prescribed TBR and a pile of possibilities. I think it's like a priority pile that I intend to read. Others may sneak their way on, and I'm really excited to DNF if something's not working for me. With that being said, please don't be overwhelmed by the size of my TBR. It feels good for me. Let's dive into the TBR. And I do have a computer open because I want to make sure I've got my little spreadsheet here, and I want to make sure that I address all the books that I don't yet have physical copies for. There's also quite a lot of NetGalley books on this particular month. So first of all, we've got one of 2 reads for the Read Harder Challenge, the Book Riot Read Harder Challenge. This is for the 3rd and 4th prompt, these first 2 books that I'll talk about. For the 3rd prompt in the Read Harder Challenge, I will be reading Rest is Resistance, a Manifesto by Tricia Hershey. This is for a book about activism, and this may not feel like activism, but I really think it is. So I'm going to be reading this. I think the title maybe says it all, but let's just have a look here. It says, disrupt and push back against capitalism and white supremacy. So this really is an activism book. And white supremacy by connecting to the liberating power of rest, daydreaming, and naps as a foundation for healing and justice. Tricia Hershey, the founder and creator of the Nap Ministry, encourages us to elevate rest as a form of resistance and a divine human right. I'm all about rest. I really am. It's part of the reason why I have 30 books on my TBR and why I have kind of facilitated this TBR and all of my year's TBRs so very, very carefully for 2023. So I am really looking forward to finding out how she presents that argument. Then I have ordered a copy of this and it's on its way from Better World Books. But for the challenged book. I am stemming a little bit outside of the prescription that they gave for this, because I've read most of the recently challenged books, banned books, which is another facet of this particular prompt. So I think the prompt is something like, read a banned book or a book that's been challenged in your public library or school system. And where I live, there's not a lot of books that have been challenged, to be honest, and I have read most of the recently banned books. So I went with something that I've never read, but it's from quite a long time ago, and it was challenged in my local school system and banned in the 70s. But I've never read it, so I'm looking forward to going back in time and reading The Learning Tree by Gordon Parks. As I said, I do have a copy of this on its way to me. I haven't read much about it. I don't know much about it at all. I'm just going to kind of go into it blind, but I will be reading it to fulfill that particular prompt. Now I have my standalone fiction titles that I am excited to get into. I will be reading this on a total impulse. This is Judith McNaught's Until You. This is part of a series, but I don't intend to read the series. I needed a book to fulfill my cart for a recent book outlet order, and the cover that I saw was completely different from this. I doubt I would have even looked at this if I'd seen this cover. That's me being a cover snob. But the storyline really attracted me, and so I'm still really interested in reading this, and I'm gonna give it a try. I've looked it up, and I know it's book 3 in a series, but I think they're companion novels, not actual series. So here's the premise that drew me in. It says, a teacher in a school for wealthy young ladies, Sheridan Bromley, is hired to accompany heiress Chase Lancaster to England to meet her fiancé. When her charge elopes with a stranger, Sheridan wonders how she will explain it to Carissa's intended, Lord Burleton. Or maybe it's Charisse. Did I say Charisse? It's Charise. Miss Lancaster's intended Lord Burleton. Standing on the pier, Stephen Westmoreland, the Earl of Langford, assumes the young woman coming toward him is Miss Lancaster and informs her of his role in the fatal accident involving Lord Burleton the night before. And just as Sheridan is about to speak, she steps into the path of a cargo net loaded with crates. Sheridan awakens in Westmoreland's mansion with no memory of who she is. The only hint of her past is the puzzling fact that everyone calls her Miss Lancaster, and all she truly knows is that she is falling in love with a handsome English earl and that life unfolding before her seems full of wondrous possibilities. It sounds like the kind of historical romance I might be interested in. And like I said, the cover that they displayed on Book Outlet was completely different. It was like all foliage and stuff. So I don't know why I'm saying that. In defense of reading something I don't normally read, based on just a total impulse. So I'm going to be reading Until You by Judith McNaught. I am going to be reading, so I asked people to participate in that 12 books by 12 friends challenge that was going around at the end of the year, the beginning of the year. And I did one with my Facebook crowd, and I did one with my Bookstagram crowd. So the book of the month for my Facebook crowd is Killers of a Certain Age, and I will be listening to this on my Libby app. For that, I've never read a Deanna Raybourn. If I enjoy this, I might start that long series that she's got going on that everybody talks about, but we'll see. We'll see how I feel. And then for my Bookstagram crowd, a very different crowd indeed, I was recommended Unlikely Animals by Annie Hartnett. And again, I will be listening to that via audiobook from the Libby Library. My book of the month choice in January, I chose Independence by Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni. When I lived in India, one of the very first books by Indian authors that I read was Sister of My Heart by this author, and it has remained a favorite of mine for the longest time. And this one says, 3 sisters, their deep bond, and the struggle for India's freedom. Set during the partition of British India in 1947, a time of both immense gain and heartrending loss, award-winning author Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni's novel brings to life the sweeping story of three sisters caught up in events beyond their control, their unbreakable bond, and their incredible struggle against powerful odds. So it will follow Priya, Jamani, and Deepa. And they will have three disparate storylines that I believe kind of act as archetype storylines for different roles that people played or experienced within the partition and the Quit India campaign. So that will be very interesting. I'm looking forward to that one. And then I joined the Kindred Spirits book club that is run by Kate Howe, and I'm really excited to be part of this group. And I joined them after I had already made most of my plans for TBRs. So I'm just adding on these books, and they fit so well. When I read her list of books for the year, they fit so well with kind of the intention that I have for the majority of my reading for the year. Of course, I won't only read feel-good, warm, and cozy, human-centered books, but that is my intention for the majority of my reading for the year. And in February, we are going to read Nancy Mitford's The Pursuit of Love. And I do have a copy of this coming to me from Better World Books. I have read, oddly enough, Love in a Cold Climate, which is the second book in this, I believe, trilogy, but I have never read The Pursuit of Love. I did watch the miniseries that was put out on Amazon last year, and I am really hopeful that that is not going to ruin my experience with the book. Hey Lola, what do you got there? Oh, it's cooking so good. It's going to taste so good. It sure is going to taste so good. Would you like one of these? Cut nicely. But what's really fun about reading this, even if the book is a little bit ruined by my having already watched the miniseries and read the second book, is that I get to discuss them with people who are just so excited about reading this kind of literature. So by this kind, I mean like feel good, warm, cozy, really human-centered reading experiences. So I'm looking forward to reading that one. I am really looking forward to reading Diana Giovinazzo's Antoinette's sister. Marie Antoinette is one of my favorite historical women to champion for. She has gotten a really bad rap. Historians, go ahead, let's have a discussion in the text if you want to. But I am here to speak on behalf of a woman who has been defamed by a cartoon for centuries. So this is about her sister and the life that her sister had to lead. She kind of didn't have her own life for a lot of different reasons. She was on track to kind of fulfill some of her own dreams and goals and get to pursue her own relationship, etc. But then her older sister dies, I believe of the smallpox, and she has to step into the role that her older sister is going to play as far as an arranged marriage, etc. So what can she do from her vantage point? How does her unhappy marriage play a role in that? What kind of power does she have within her very limited scope of influence to try to build a life for herself and try to save her sister and other things? So I'm really looking forward to that particular story and reading more about that. I saw this and added it on a whim. To be honest, if anything's going to get pushed to a further TBR in the future, it'll probably be this one. But I saw The Independence of Miss Mary Bennett, and I scooped it up on Kindle Unlimited because I would like to read it. It is by Colleen McAuliffe. And over Christmas break, we had just the briefest little talk about the thorn birds. And I was like, you know what? I really, really love the writing style of this author. What else have they written? Besides that whole like really long Caesar trilogy, I think it was a trilogy. I read one of the books in that and it was too much. They're like over 1,000 pages long each I almost said episode, each book in that series. And they weren't really getting me. I was not connecting with the characters. So I was like, what else has that author written? And I saw this kind of companion novel about Mary Bennett, companion to Pride and Prejudice, about Mary Bennett and making her the main character. And I thought, you know what? I would really like this. I read The Other Bennett Sister years ago, before this phase of my life, before the booktube phase of my life. And I think it was just not the right time for me. I did not love it like everybody else did. I still have it because I think maybe in another mood I might enjoy it more. But I think I'd like to see what Colleen McCullough does with the story, where she takes it. It'll probably be a lot less literary than The Other Bennett Sister, but I'm okay with that. It's February. Romance is in the air, and I've got 2 romance novels basically on my list. So I'm gonna give it a try. But if anything's gonna get dropped, it's probably gonna be this one. For one thing, it's only on my Kindle, and for another, it was the most recent one to be added, and it's been added on a complete and utter whim. So if I get to it, I get to it. If I don't, I'll put it on a list further in the future, maybe in the summer, maybe in July, for Jane Austen July. Who knows? Next on my list, I have this arc that I will definitely be getting to. Again, it is on my Kindle. It's a NetGalley release. This is The Grace of Wild Things, and it will be released in February, on February 14th. So I will definitely be reading it the first half of February to give you my thoughts on it before it gets released. If you want those thoughts, head over to my Bookstagram account. The link is in the tree in the information box on the bottom of this video. So I am a little bit confused about this. It seems to be connected somehow to Anne of Green Gables, but the main character is not named Anne. She goes to, I think the Marilla character is actually a witch in this one, and she's not nice, I don't think. So I'm not really sure how much of a connection I want to make going into it. Anne of Green Gables is a little bit sacred, right? So I'm not sure how much of a connection in my own mind I want to make going into this book. I think that the only connection I would like to make is that this is about a young girl looking for her place in the world, and she finds it. But we will see after I read it how I feel about that. So I was really excited to be given permission to read this one. The next one that I have is not coming out until March. I will definitely try to read this in February, but it is another NetGalley arc. It is The Golden Spoon. My understanding of this one is very limited because it is a mystery. So I did not read a ton about it, but I've heard other people talking about it, and it piqued my interest when I saw it was on NetGalley. I requested it, and lo and behold, they gave it to me. So I'm always surprised by what I am allowed to, like what I'm given permission for and what I'm not. Like certain things I'm like, oh, I'm a shoo-in for this, and I don't get it. And then other things I'm like, oh, it's a real long shot. And they're like, please read this book. So we'll see. But I am excited about The Golden Spoon. Again, I purposefully don't know a whole lot about it, but I will prioritize it because it is coming out in March, very early March. This one I requested and thought that I would get it, and I did get it. It's not coming out until May, so if I need to push another book, because this TBR is quite large, so if I need to push another book to next month, then it will be this one. But I'm hoping, I would really like to read No Life for a Lady by Hannah Dolby. This is, from my understanding, and my understanding may be wrong, right? So we'll find out after the wrap up. But my understanding is that this is about a woman during the pioneer days who goes who goes west. She's from the east. She goes west, and is trying to live that settler life, but she wants to remain a single woman. And I think that it's going to be fun, but also it's going to be a time period that I enjoy reading about, but it also is going to maybe have some of the 20th century, 21st century sensibilities about white people settling this country. So settling this country, which it is one of my favorite periods to read about, but I also acknowledge the real issues with romanticizing that period. I still am a real sucker for a pioneer story. I think that this will be a nice balance of that particular era, and yet it will also address the difficulties of that time period. So I'm looking forward to giving this a try. I also think it's lighthearted. I don't think this is hard-hitting in any way, shape, or form. But I also think that it doesn't sugarcoat things. So we'll see. I have The Rose and the Thistle by Laura France. This is already out, but I did receive a NetGalley for this last week. I had requested the NetGalley ages ago, but they didn't give it to me. And then all of a sudden they gave it to me, and I don't know why, but hey, thank you. I also happen to have it on my Libby app. So I was planning on reading this anyway, but I was going to listen to it. I've read one other Laura France. I read it last January, A Bound Heart, I believe. And this is warm, cozy, feel-good Christian fiction, a romance, but it was really excellently written. I know that sometimes I grew up reading all the Christian fiction, like Bethany House was my house. I lived there. Nelson Publishing, read their entire catalog. This reads like Christian historical romance, but the quality of writing is secular. So I know that it feels like a big judgment call, but I think that if I'm going to be honest, I have to say that in Christian fiction, so much of the writing is really, really poorly done. And so if you hate me for that, I'm sorry. But it is how I feel. But when I read the Laura France, I really, really enjoyed it. It is A Bound Heart, and I really enjoyed it. And so I was going to give another one a try, but I didn't want to purchase one in case she let me down. If I do really love this, I will go ahead and purchase a copy of it. This is The Rose and the Thistle, and I think it again takes place in Scotland. I think it again is some kind of romance, and again it will have the underpinnings of Christian values, let's say biblical values. As a Christian, I don't always align with quote unquote Christian values. Let's go with biblical values. And I think that I'm really going to enjoy this. I really would like to highly recommend A Bound Heart as a book that anyone from any faith background could read and enjoy and appreciate as a well-written piece of historical fiction. So I'll listen to that and read it on my Kindle. Then my Shakespeare for the month with my group that I'm reading all of the tragedies with this year is Coreyelanus. And I don't remember a whole lot about Coreyelanus. So the first time I read this would have been in 2020 when we were reading all of the Shakespeare, and that meant we were reading at a much faster pace, and I think this is melded with something else. I'll probably start to remember it as I start to read it, but off the top of my head right now, I can't differentiate it for you from most of the other kind of Roman era Cymbeline. I don't know. So this is why I'm excited to reread all of the tragedies. Gonna read The Last Garden in England. This is by Julia Kelly. This is one of those multiple timeline books that I love so much, set in the UK that I love so much. That's like my favorite setting for a book. Second favorite is maybe Iceland, probably. So I am really excited to read this just because I'm excited about the setting, the multiple timelines, but this is covering like what happens, or I think all the characters are tied together by the garden itself. One of them lives in the present day, one lives in 1907, and one lives in 1944. So I've kind of veered away from really enjoying World War II literature, but I have found that I will enjoy it if it's just one storyline among many. Oh, maybe we want to know what it's about? It says it's a poignant, unforgettable tale of 5 women connected across time by one very special garden. So Emma Lovell has dedicated her career to breathing new life into long neglected gardens. But when she gets the chance of a lifetime to restore the grounds of the famed Highbury House, Emma begins to uncover secrets long buried in the garden's past. And then the other women will be from the past, and I don't want to know their secrets, so I'm not going to read the back of that. One of the books that I pulled off of my shelf as a book that I really need to get to because I've been waiting for a really long time, I have 12 of them, one a month, is Seesaw Girl by Linda Sue Park. This is a tiny little book with lots of really beautiful full-page illustrations, and I am looking forward to it. Everything I read by Linda Sue Park is magic, but I have not read Seesaw Girl. It says Jade yearns to see what lies beyond her home's walls. That's right. So she lives in an era or a period in Korea where she as a young girl is not allowed, or she is a female, I think, is not allowed to leave the confines of her family estate. So she has to live within these walls, and life comes to her. She can't go out and find it. So it's, she dreams of what's on the other side of the wall, and I think she actually goes out into the world. So I'm interested in that one. And then as far as standalones, I just have 2 more. I have Jane Johnson's The White Hare. Again, the setting is England, and I'm excited about it. I think this is in the 50s. It says a spellbinding novel about 3 generations of women and the local legends, plural, that changed their lives. In the far west of Cornwall lies the White Valley, which cuts deeply through Bluebell Woods down to the sea at White Cove. The valley has a long and bloody history laced with folklore, and in it sits a house above the beach that has lain neglected since the war. It comes with a reputation and a strange atmosphere, which is why Magdalena and her grown daughter Mila managed to acquire it so cheaply in the fateful summer of 1954. Magda has grand plans to restore the house to its former glory as a venue for glittering parties where the rich and celebrated gather for cocktails and for bracing walks along the coast. Mila just wants to escape the scandal in her past and make a safe and happy home for her little girl Janie, a solitary, precocious child blessed with a vivid imagination, much of which she pours into stories about her magical plush toy rabbit. But Janie's rabbit isn't the only magical being around, and I'm going to pause there. I don't want to read any more. So there's this 3-generation family of women that move into this White Hare in the 1950s to try and refurbish it, but there are maybe other beings, entities, time periods that have something or some stake on it. It happens in Cornwall. It's got like my dream home on the cover. If anybody wants to give me that house, I'm here for it. Weird legends and all. And so I'm going to put it in my head. I'm going to put it in my imagination. I'm excited to read about that one. It's not a book I've heard anybody talk about ever. And it is, she's not an author I've heard about. So this was published in 2021. So I was really excited to stumble upon it. And then finally, I have a children's book that I would like to read about a beagle doing beagle things, because I've got my own little beagle who constantly does beagle things. This is Zoomer by Ned Young. And so I am excited to read about a beagle who gets into a lot of trouble, because I have a little beagle who gets into a lot of trouble. Yes, a lot of trouble. Yes, she does. But I love her, and I'm sure I will love Zoomer as well. Nope. All right, so let's see here. Let's move into series. So in December, I had intended to read, no, Lola, no, thank you. In December, I had, oh, do you want The World We Make to finish up this duology, but I didn't get to it, and then I didn't feel like I had the desire, really, to read it in January, but I am excited to read it in February. This is The World We Make by N.K. Jemisin. It is the second book. It's the sequel to The City That Made Us. Is that what it was called? I think so. The City We Became. The City We Became. So this is The World We Make, sequel to The City We Became. And if you know, you know, this is just a fast-paced, astute, social commentary, sci-fi, fantasy, dystopian, apocalyptical maybe, fantasy, really fun, really, really well written. Characterization is beautiful in it. And yeah, so I'm really excited to read it. And so is Lola. Are you using me to be able to look out the window? Is that what's happening? Is that what's happening? You are really, really, retract those claws, baby. She's got like claws like a cat, where they don't seem that long until she wants them to be long. And then, oh my goodness, they're painful. So I'm excited to read The World We Make. I am going to be continuing on with the Arcana Chronicles. My used copy of this happened to be almost like brand new feeling, and I got it from Better World Books for like $4, but it is a used copy, and I'm super excited about that. It's the second book in the Arcana Chronicles, and I just last night actually read, without meaning to read the whole thing in one go, I read the entire first book, reread it, The Poison Princess. I forgot how very, very consumable these books are, and also cringy, but I loved it, and so it's taking all of my will to not just pick this up now and to wait until February, but I'm excited. I'm not going to tell you about the book itself. If you're not familiar with the Arcana Chronicles, it is a post-apocalyptic fantasy YA romance about Evie and Jack and a host of other characters that are all like mythological manifestations of the arcana in the tarot cards. So you've got death, you've got the hermit, you've got the hanged man, you've got all of these things. And they play different roles in life, and they just keep replaying these roles over and over again, having these otherworldly battles, in the hope that eventually one of them will reign supreme. But they've done this for a really long time, over and over and over again. Not exactly a reincarnation sort of a thing, but maybe like a remanifestation sort of a thing. And in the first book, you just have Evie, you have the apocalyptic event that happens. You have a lot of romance, a lot of angst that happens because they are teenagers. And you also have Evie just kind of starting to recall who she really is, because she hasn't known for 16 years, really. She was told, but she didn't remember. So that's what the premise of the series is, and the first book. Many other things happen. I haven't really ruined anything at all, but many, many other things happen. And that's pretty much probably the only synopsis you're going to get from me as I read this series, because things get really weird and specific as the series moves forward, as it should be. I am going to pick up A Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. The prequel or companion novella is coming out soon, and I would really like to read that. I read Crows, A Feast of Crows, is that what it's called? By this author. I have not read Sorcery of Thorns, and I've been meaning to for a really long time, and the fact that that new one is coming out and the cover is so appealing to me is really the impetus for finally picking this up. So I'm going to read Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson, or Rogerson. I don't know how to say her last name. And I think everybody knows about this premise but me. It says, all sorcerers are evil. Elizabeth has known that as long as she has known anything. Raised as a foundling in one of Ostermere's great libraries, Elizabeth has grown up among magical grimoires that rattle beneath iron chains, capable of transforming into grotesque monsters. When an act of sabotage releases the library's most dangerous grimoire, Elizabeth is accused of treason. With no one to turn to but her sworn enemy, the sorcerer Nathaniel Thorne, and his mysterious servant, she finds herself entangled in a centuries-old conspiracy. Not only could the great libraries go up in flames, but the world along with them. So, sounds right up my alley. Excited about all of the fantasy that I've been reading this year, really. Like, so much fantasy this year. That's very unlike me, but I'm really, really loving it. So I'm going to keep scooping it up for as long as that is the case. I'm going to start a new series. This is The Siren of Sussex by Mimi Matthews. I read Holiday by Gaslight, her very, very beloved Christmas novella. I read that in December and just was really taken with her writing style and the way that she developed characters and the way that she had dialogue and how much historical accuracy was worked into that without making it unaccessible for people in 2022. So I just really am very excited to start the series. She's got 2 books in this series so far, and I am looking forward to it. I know she has other series that I could read on my Kindle, but I really wanted a physical copy. So if this goes well and I become like a total Mimi Matthews stan, that may be the first time I've used that term. If I really fall in love with Mimi Matthews and I become a fan of hers, then I will read the rest of her Kindle stuff. But for now, I'm excited about this one and the next one that is coming either out soon or has already come out. I'm not sure. But this one says, Evelyn Maltravers understands exactly how little she's worth on the marriage mart. As an incurable blue stocking from a family tumbling swiftly toward ruin, she knows she'll never make a match in a ballroom. Her only hope is to distinguish herself by making the biggest splash in one sphere where she excels. On horseback, in haute couture. But to truly capture London's attention, she'll need a habit maker who's not afraid to take risks with his design and his heart. Ahmad Malik has always had a talent for making women feel beautiful, inching his way toward recognition as a tailor despite the prejudices against his Indian heritage by designing riding habits for Rotten Row's infamous pretty horsebreakers. But no one compares to Evelyn. Her unbridled spirit enchants him, awakening a depth of feeling he never thought possible. But pushing boundaries comes at a cost, and not everyone is pleased to welcome Evelyn and Ahmad into fashionable society. With obstacles spanning between them, the indomitable pair must decide which hurdles they can jump and what matters most, making their mark or following their heart. So yes, another romance. This is like romance central for me, but I am really excited about that one and Mimi Matthews in general. I think that she might be another Sophie Kinsella type author for me, only with the added plus that it's a Victorian era novel. I love Victorian era novels. Also on its way to me from Better World Books, which I don't have a copy of yet, but it will be here any day now, really, is The Girl in the Tower, the second book in the Bear and the Nightingale series, whatever that series is called. Read The Bear and the Nightingale last month, loved it. Looking forward to continuing on in that story. I will be reading the second book in the Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels series, whatever that series is called. Doesn't say on here, very easily to find. This, I think, is a companion, not necessarily a direct series. I don't know. I haven't really read the back. I just loved the weirdness of that book. The way that it just like so matter-of-factly built the world. And yet it's also giving you this really like run-of-the-mill type, gentle, feel-good Victorian romance about lady pirates and you know, magical instances, magical laws. And it was just also matter of fact. It's also bizarre and yet average all at the same time. And I just really ate it up. I loved it. So I am excited. I hear this one is even weirder. I am excited for the League of Gentlewoman Witches. And I'm not going to read much of it, but it just says, just when you thought it was safe to go back into the tea house, you have this one. I actually purchased a brand new copy of this. I'm so into that particular series. I think that the third book is also coming out this year. If so, I've already worked it into a future TBR. So I'm really excited about this series and this author. I don't know if India Holton has other books, but I'm going to start looking into that soon. Another series I'm going to go ahead and continue on with is Diana Gabaldon's Outlander series. I read the first book. While, yes, I do have some issues with some of the things that are romanticized in that book, such as wife abuse. Overall, I love this series and I love the author's writing style. I had already seen the first season of the show and it was similar, but not exact. I went ahead and rewatched the first season after I finished reading the book. And that was, I think, the way that I will do all of these. I have not watched all the seasons, so some of them will be completely new to me, and I don't know, maybe diverge completely, but I did read to see, like, does each season correspond to a book? And it does seem that each season does correspond to a book, so that's my game plan. I'm going to read the book and then watch the season, and that was really, really fun. Jamie is my new book husband. Leave Jamie alone. Hands off. I feel sorry for Frank. I feel so sorry for Frank. I don't know if I'm supposed to. I don't know if he's going to be a good guy or not, but I feel like in the TV show, he's not as good of a guy as he is in this. He's not a bad guy in the TV show. He's just like kind of standoffish. Their relationship seems cold, but in the books, you don't get that feeling. I didn't get that feeling. It felt very warm and alive, needing to be rekindled because of separation and anxiety, PTSD, but it felt very real. And then she just kind of like, I don't know how I feel about her. Claire, this is not supposed to be a wrap up. I'm going to stop. I'm going to continue on with Winston Graham's Poldark series. The second book is called Demelza, and Demelza was my favorite part of the first book in the series. This is, let's see, Demelza Carn, the impoverished miner's daughter Ross Poldark, rescued from a fairground rabble. I can't read the rest of that because it's a spoiler for the first book. But Demelza is my very favorite character in the first book, and I'm really excited that the second book is named Demelza. So if I don't finish Discovery of Witches in January, then I will finish it in February and pick this book up in March, but I think I will finish it in January and be picking up Shadow of Night, which is the second book in this series. I don't know the name of the series, so let's just call it the Discovery of Witches series. And this is the second book. I won't tell you about it, but I will say that this one does have some time travel involved, and it does take place in the Elizabethan period for the most part. So I know that I love this series. I know that I want to reread this series so that I can read that third book and the, I think, prequel or companion fourth book, and which I have never read before, but I've read the first and the second book, and so they're rereads for me. I read them way back in 2011 and 2012, or 2012 and 2013, somewhere around there. And so I need a reread of them, but really, really excited to reread them, even if it's one that I don't really get to in January. We shall see how that goes. I am going to read Walking the Invisible, Following in the Bronte's Footsteps. So now we're in the non-fiction section of the TBR. So this is, it says, an authoritative, inspirational, and often humorous companion to a great Yorkshire family and the landscape that shaped them. Join award-winning author Michael Stewart on a wild and windy journey across the historic paths the Brontes trod while writing their most famous works. Along the way, you will unearth the real settings behind the blustery hilltop of Wuthering Heights, the Gothic halls of Jane Eyre, and the Tudor manors of the tenant of Wildfell Hall. Discover the fascinating social and political history behind these iconic landscapes and get closer to the lives and writings of the Brontes than ever before. So I actually had to order this from Blackwell's. This is not readily available in States. I think you can order it on Amazon, but it will come to you from Blackwell's or Book Depository. So be prepared to wait for a while. I just went straight to Blackwell's and ordered it. The Brontes are an obsession of mine. I love their books. I love learning about their life. I love learning about their time period. I love reading adjacent work about their work. And so that is what this is. It's a treat to myself. It was one of my inadvertent, because I wasn't going to do a birthday book haul, but ended up doing a birthday book haul. So it was one of my birthday book haul books. Huge. And there's no audiobook, so it's just me and the book, which I think is going to be very, very good for me. But this is called The Heart of the World by Ian Baker, A Journey to the Last Secret Place. I just read a little bit about ShangriLa in the Ichigo Ichie book that I read for January in a totally different context. But this is a little bit about ShangriLa. I've been wanting to read this book for years. It's got Tibetan script on the inside. I lived in Tibet. I used to take groups of students when I lived in India to go meet the Dalai Lama in Dharamsala, and I am not a Buddhist. I'm not Tibetan, but I just am very, very, very drawn to that culture, and it is a place that is very close to my heart. It is a people group that is very close to my heart, and their recognition as their own people group is a cause that I have really stood behind. It's part of the reason why this book is so close to my heart, and I've wanted to read it for a really long time, and I always forget about it. I remember it constantly and yet constantly forget about it too. When I was trying to figure out what do I want to focus on for my reading in 2023, I was originally planning on doing like a fruit of the spirit sort of focus, where each month was on a different fruit of the spirit. So but then there weren't enough. So then I added like heart, mind, and soul as focuses. And I was building TBRs. I was building reading lists around those as conceptual ideas, and was reminded of heart. Now, I abandoned that as a guide for my reading because it was too limiting month by month. I thought that I would much rather integrate the books, the lists. I thought that I would much more rather integrate the lists. And in integrating the lists, I replaced a bunch of things, I got rid of a bunch of things, but a lot of the books from that original planning remain. And this is one of them, because I finally got it on a list so I wouldn't forget to remember it, even though I remember it all the time. All of that to say, this is a book that I've wanted to read for quite some time. It was published originally in 2004. So it really has been on my radar since before I left India. It's been on my radar for a really long time. It is essentially about this. It says, the legend of ShangriLa emerged from the Tibetan Buddhist belief in Beul, or hidden lands. According to Tibetan tradition, the more remote and inaccessible the Beul, the more illuminating the paradise it conceals. Ancient Tibetan prophecies claim that the greatest of these mystical sanctuaries lies at the eastern edge of the Himalayas, veiled in a colossal waterfall at the heart of the forbidding Tsangpo Gorge, the earth's deepest and most impenetrable chasm. For generations, Tibetan pilgrims and Western explorers alike sought a route into the depth of the gorge in quest of this mythic waterfall. In 1924, after the last ill-fated British expedition, the Royal Geographical Society declared the legendary falls of the Tsangpo to be nothing more than a religious myth and a romance of geography. The heart of the Tsangpo Gorge remains a blank spot on the map of world exploration until world-class climber and Buddhist scholar Ian Baker, the author of this book, set out more than 20 years ago to learn the truth behind the ancient Tibetan Buddhist legends. After years of interviewing lamas, deciphering cryptic tantric texts, and making pilgrimages to the gorge on the last of a series of harrowing expeditions, Baker and his National Geographic-sponsored team made worldwide news by reaching the bottom of the gorge and finding a magnificent 108-foot-high waterfall, the legendary grail of both Western explorers and Tibetan seekers. The Heart of the World recounts one of the most captivating stories of exploration and discovery in recent memory, an extraordinary journey into one of the wildest and most inaccessible places on Earth, a meditation on our place in nature, and a pilgrimage to the heart of the Tibetan Buddhist faith. This harkens back to a me that I don't always harken back to. So I'm really excited to dive back into that world and those kinds of ponderings, and to just really reminisce about my own experiences. Like I won't take you through all of those, but like for myself to reminisce through some of my own memories and experiences, and maybe even reach out to some of the people from that time in my life that I haven't necessarily talked to in a while. 2 more books. I have this one, which was an impulse buy from Book Outlet, but it just sounded so fascinating. I didn't realize it was so short. Pleasantly surprised. It is, I think it said Jenna, like my name. I'm not sure. Is it Jenna? Jenna, I don't know, but Jenna, The Republic of Free Spirits, 1800, by Peter Newman, translated by Shelley Frisch. And so this says, at the turn of the 19th century, a steady stream of young German poets and thinkers coursed to the town of Jenna to make history. In the wake of the French Revolution and the Napoleonic Wars, confidence in traditional social, political, and religious norms had been replaced by a profound uncertainty that was as terrifying for some. I just want to finish this, baby. We've been going for 1 hour and 20 minutes, mostly because of you. At the turn of the 19th century, a steady stream of young German poets and thinkers coursed to the town of Jenna to make history. In the wake of the French Revolution and the Napoleonic Wars, confidence in traditional social, political, and religious norms had been replaced by profound uncertainty that was as terrifying for some as it was exhilarating for others. Nowhere was the excitement more palpable than among the extraordinary group of poets, philosophers, translators, and socialites who gathered in Jenna. This village of just 4,000 residents soon became the place to be for the young and intellectually curious in search of philosophical disruption. Influenced by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, then an elder statesman and artistic eminence, the leading figures among the disruptors, the translator August Wilhelm Schlegel, the philosophers Friedrich Schlegel and Friedrich Schelling, the dazzling controversial intellectual Caroline Schlegel, married to August, the poet and translator Dorothea Schlegel, married to Frederick, and the poets Ludwig Tieck and Novalis, resolved to rethink the world, to establish a republic of free spirits. They didn't just question inherited social traditions with their provocative views of the individual and of nature, they revolutionized our understanding of freedom and reality. So I have always been like the most fascinating period of American history for me is the Transcendentalist movement. I love to teach about the Transcendentalist movement. I love to read about the Transcendentalist movement and Transcendentalism. And although it is considered the only truly American philosophy, Transcendentalism, it is highly, highly, highly influenced by the people that I have just stumbled over their names here, the Schlegels, etc. And so I have not successfully discovered, I have discovered some, but I have not successfully discovered a biography or a nonfiction work that explores this group in this moment all together at once. And so I was really excited when I stumbled upon this book. And I think it's a fairly recent publication. But again, I don't hear very many people talking about it. I think maybe it is quite a, 2018 was when it was first written, but the translated first came out in 2022. So it's been out in Germany for a while. But I think it's a very niche sort of interest. But it is one of mine. I would really like to read about the people and the concepts that highly influenced the movers and the shakers of Transcendentalism. Finally, I have one last NetGalley pick, and this one doesn't come out until April, so if I need to wait on it, I will, but I really am very excited to read it, so I probably won't wait on it. I'm pretty excited about it. And this is before Mrs. Beaton, Elizabeth Rathfeld. So this is basically the biography of a woman named Elizabeth Rathfeld, who was kind of the Martha Stewart of her era. Mrs. Beaton gets a lot of the credit for kind of being the expert on housekeeping, home economics in the maybe late, I think Elizabeth Rathfeld is in the late Georgian period, but Mrs. Beaton is from staunchly the Victorian period. This is the precursor to Mrs. Beaton, but they do overlap in their time period. And Elizabeth Rathfeld was, like I said, like the Martha Stewart. Like, she was publishing cookbooks, and I think she was contributing to newspapers. She was doing little newspaper journalistic articles about homemaking and homekeeping. So she was a published author. She was a published journalist. She was running these really like upscale inns, like public houses. When I say a pub, don't think like an American idea of a pub, think like a British idea of a pub, but they were really upscale. And she was just really doing a great job with her life. But then for some reason, she loses everything, including like her social standing. And I don't know what happens. I'm really excited to read about what happens. I have heard the name Elizabeth Rathfeld before, but I did not understand her story in any way. So I've told you what I learned just in reading the synopsis of this book when I was looking at requesting it. I'm very curious about stories of great social loss, like of levels of like plummeting social status, especially of women in the Victorian period. That is definitely, again, a niche interest of mine. So as you can see, I am really focusing on 4 niche interests of mine. I'm focusing on the Brontes. I am focusing on ShangriLa. I am focusing on philosophical thought that influenced transcendentalism. And I am focusing on women in the Victorian period who rise to great heights only to have it all pulled out from underneath them. All of these great stories that I just really, really want to immerse myself in. I know that's a lot of books. I'm feeling like my old reading self as far as speed and ability. So I don't think that it's going to be a problem. And again, if I don't, I don't. That's not what the TBR is about. The TBR is about cultivating and collating stories that I am interested in so that I can reach for something and know that this is definitely something that I believe I will love. I really just want to say, like I've said before, but I really just want to say, like, read where you're comfortable. I am very comfortable with what I am reading right now. Have you read any of these? Are you excited about any of these? Do you share any of my niche interests that I'm going to be reading about? Or maybe you don't share them yet, but maybe you're a little bit curious about Shangri-La or something now. Now that the puppy has finally settled down, let me just lift you up here. Baby has finally chilled out. I am going to go ahead and eat the delicious food that I have been cooking while making this video. I've got some teriyaki chicken and some Mediterranean vegetables and some deliciously seasoned potatoes. Very excited. It smells so good in here. Teriyaki is my new obsession. I'm going to repaint my nails because that is another thing that I used to paint my nails all the time and then I stopped. And so for whatever reason, pandemic, why paint my nails? And so that is definitely one of the quirky teacher things that I like to capitalize on, that's easy to do, that also feels like a self-care thing. So I am going to repaint my nails for the week and just spend the rest of the day editing this video and relaxing. Thanks for being here. Hope your 2023 has gotten off to a really positive start. And let's go read.